all that we're talking about happened today, sort of. One of the things might have happened yesterday, but the video was released today, and it obviously was talked about on Democracy Now! Today. And then this article was released in The Breach, and we are going to read it, about the BC NDP. So we've talked about the Wet'suwet'en and what is happening on their territory, their unceded territory, having to do with the fact that this company, CGL, is wanting to build a pipeline through them, but also like do oil and gas fracking in the area. And yeah, it hasn't been great. This before the pandemic, back in the day, there was an escalation in the tensions there, where the RCMP stormed through one of their barricades, and there was a crackdown on them then, which resulted in people blocking railroad infrastructure across Canada. Mostly Indigenous activists, but local allies were. I don't like the word ally, but I'm going to use it here anyways. But like allies and other activists came in solidarity, were blocking railroad infrastructure across the country, which was nice. Of course, then the pandemic hit. A lot of that activism sort of like died down, picked up a bit when the land back thing happened, and now things have picked up again in Wet'suwet'en. And we talked about this on the day that, or the day after the floods had happened recently in BC. And it was kind of ironic that we brought it up, because it turned like, I already thought like this is a good contrast to make, considering that, hey, you know, maybe we should care about the environment. And one way to care about the environment is to not continue with our oil and gas extraction, let alone our oil and gas extraction on Indigenous unceded territory. And so I wanted to make that contrast, only to find that that day Wet'suwet'en also put out a statement saying that they were going to evict CGL members from their land, and then proceeded to try to do so. The CGL people then read the injunction, and then of course the Canadian government sent in the RCMP, Canadian government working with the BC NDP government to send in the RCMP to break it all up. Which, again, in contrast, when you think about the fact that there are still people struggling with the floods that just occurred in BC, and rather than go, we should put all hands on deck to help with the resources over here for this flood that just happened, we're going to invest in arresting Indigenous people off their land. Sounds like the greatest use of resources that you could ever have. The RCMP, whose pension fund is invested in CGL. Correct, Muta. That is a depressing fact about our current situation, but yes. So they're benefiting off of that project. And then arresting the people. Isn't it wonderful? So fantastic. So today, or yesterday, whenever this footage was made, the arrest occurred. And we are going to watch the video as it was played out on Democracy Now! Here. It's like a 3-minute clip. We'll watch it mostly in full, I guess. I don't know if we'll need to stop it, but it's, I guess, content warning. It's, I don't know. It fills me with extreme rage. I don't know. I don't know how else to content warn it other than, yeah, it's pretty rage-inducing. So we're going to watch this clip.
Wet'suwet'en land defender slay.
I should also say as well, again, I've been doing the audio thing. Let me know if it's too quiet. I will try to boost it and then maybe bring it back down, because part of the issue that I'm working on with audio fixes is that Vienna and Elron might be louder than the video, and that right now we're sort of like mixed well, so I don't want to like crank the thing. Anyways, just let me know if it's too quiet. I'll turn it up while I play it.
Also known as Molly Wickham, was released from jail Tuesday evening after being arrested Friday during a violent raid by Canadian federal police on one of the camps set up to keep Coastal GasLink out of sovereign Indigenous territory. The raid ended a 56-day blockade of the drilling site in Canada. The 400-mile pipeline within Wet'suwet'en land violates both Indigenous and Canadian laws. 15 people in total were arrested Friday, including 2 journalists. One of them was documentary filmmaker Michael Toledano, who just released this dramatic footage of the raid.
They're walking to the door. They're breaking it down.
That they took an axe and chainsaws to this door
Yep.
when they didn't have a warrant, like,
And pointed their gun
and then
at them?
also, yeah, like pointing the guns, like, it's just, God.
The RCMP have breached the door. They are acting under the authority of the injunction.
Attack dogs are there.
There are attack dogs here.
Standing there, right beside the door.
Police. They used axes found in camp to break down the door.
And a chainsaw.
And a chainsaw that they found in camp.
Come here, Molly, you're under arrest.
Don't touch me.
Don't touch her.
Touch me.
Get your hands off of her!
You're under arrest.
Get your hands off of her!
You're under arrest.
With Zootin territory!
And filming a documentary for CBC
No
television.
problem. You're under arrest. Get that out of my face and back up. You're under arrest.
For the record, I'm a member of the media. You've been notified that I'm here. I'm observing.
arrest right now. Step out.
What's her name again?
Camera down.
I know she's a journalist with the CBC, I think. Which is interesting, as these both are CBC journalists that this is happening.
I'm filming a documentary for CBC
Yeah.
television. You are twisting my wrist. I'm a member of the media. I'm filming a documentary for CBC television. I have press credentials.
I will just brace yourself, because this also surprised me with what Amy Goodman is going to say here as well. This is terrifying.
Footage of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police raiding Camp Coyote on Friday, filmed by documentary filmmaker Michael Toledano, who was arrested during the raid, then jailed for 3 days. Visit democracynow.org to see our recent interview with the Wet'suwet'en land defender Slado. She spoke to us on Friday, shortly before the raid. The cabin she was speaking to us from has since been burned to the ground.
Oh my God.
They burned it to the fucking ground. I would say, like, I feel shame in this country, but, like, I've felt shame for this country for, like, a long fucking time, but, like, this shit just, it fucks me up. This is terrifying.
Yeah. And Muta, like, as much as being, like, they're not in Canada and they don't have jurisdiction and whatever, it's like, this is how all of Canada happened.
Yeah.
Like, this is just the same shit that made Canada Canada. Like, this isn't, I don't know. I do get, like, kind of frustrated in the, like, framing of, like, oh, like, this is somehow separate from the rest of Canada, because it's like, no, like, it's exactly what Canada is and has always been and will always be. There is no solution to this in which Canada, like,
Exists.
continues to exist.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like,
No, it's
like, I get it, because it's also like, yeah, like, from a legal perspective, even under Canadian law and whatever bullshit, like, it's not, it is unceded territory, it is purely under the jurisdiction of the hereditary chiefs, but it's also like, that is not something that Canada, that the Canadian legal system, that the RCMP, that, like, any of that really cares about. And you know, like, at the end of the day, they're gonna do whatever the fuck they want, considering that, like, the BC RCMP also have a, like, whole subdivision for protecting natural resource extraction. Like, this is just what they exist to do. And it's kind of just like, the whole shit shouldn't exist. You gotta, like, I don't know. Yeah, like, it's, you know, 1492 Leonback Lane, it's the announced lawsuit of Six Nations for the reclamation of the Haldimand land tract, which that'll be a fucking good one. That is a court case I'm very excited to see.
But this is why,
Yeah, I
like,
know.
the
It's just like, this is business as usual.
this is why, like, the appeal to, like, legality shit is just always disingenuous to me, because, like, at the end of the day, like, legal or not, they're gonna fucking do this, and they're gonna get away with it, because, like, they are the law, you know, that, like, that kind of, like, bullshit. It's just, to me, I don't know, like, as you sort of put it, like, as this is just an extension of what Canada has always been or has always done, And it's true, and it just like it sits with me that like there's people out there today that will say that there is no ongoing genocide, or to make that claim is disingenuous. Like what and I realize those people, they're not going to be convinced. I'm just expressing my frustration with this, which is that like what is the difference between, you know, existing in the 1600s when settlers, it was around the 1600s when settlers first started coming, right? So I can get my history right.
Yeah, into like
Yeah.
Quebec and Ontario and that kind of stuff. They'd been further east for a long time.
But it's like, to me, it's like people can somehow like compartmentalize in their heads, and I don't fully know how they do it, other than like it just helps them sleep at night or whatever the fuck they do. But like, you know, they could say to themselves like, oh, that was obviously like bad when like settlers were doing some of like the massacres that they were causing, et cetera, through colonization. But then for some reason, just because the areas get smaller and smaller and the population gets smaller and smaller, that now when something like this happens, that you want to say that it isn't genocide. It's just an extension of the thing that's always happened. This is the same project. The project never ended. You know, it's not like it happened in the 16, 17, 1800s and then it just went away and isn't happening anymore. This is still it. This is a part of that same fucking project, you know?
Yeah, and like with the sort of like appeals to legality, it's one of those like, you know, what does a legal system of a colonial power mean at the end of the day? Like, what is it that like we would be hoping to get from a judicial system that is this? What is it that we're hoping to get from like any system that is this? Like, regardless of judicial or like legislative or whatever, because it's like, you know, look at, you know, as Tukar said like earlier, where like he mentioned like leaving a message with his MLA, and it's like, oh, you know, what the fuck's gonna come of that, you know? Like, what do they give a shit about? It's not an election year. And like, you know, it's the same with reaching out to like your local MP here or your MPP or whoever the fuck, where it's just like, unless you have a personal relationship with them, and Jody, I get it, you have a personal relationship with your MPP. Like,
no, we'll talk about that
even
when
then,
we're
like,
reading this article as well. But yeah.
Yeah, and like even then, like, you know, they might express sympathy and be like, oh well, but you know, there's nothing they can fucking do about it. Like they are just overseers of a colonial extractivist system. Like, you know, they can try to like limit things a little tiny bit if they want, but for the most part, they're just overseeing the society in which the colonialism and extraction exists. They're not actually in any way embroiled in that effort, because that is just like both what capitalism does and then also what colonialism does. It's like it doesn't rely on the actual like executive power or whatever to enact it. It is just a system that once it starts going, it just continues to snowball until it's destroying itself. Like, I don't know. Yeah, like, and yeah, it ties into the BC NDP and whatever, because they're fucking horrendous. And yeah.
I think practically speaking, I agree with you in everything that you just said there. Such that like any like small pushback on it won't even matter. But I practically agree with you, which is that like none of this change is going to be coming through the electoral system in any way. As much as like I can maybe conceive of like, you know, we'll be talking about debate people in a second once the story is done, but with their hypotheticals, you know, like I could imagine a hypothetical in which like, sure, maybe with sufficient pressures here and there, we can move certain aspects of our political structure to at least not be as terrible as what is happening right now. That being said, I don't think that's happening in anywhere near the time frame that's necessary, considering the crises at hand. And that's the part where it's like, practically speaking, if you want this to be fixed, it's not going to be through like supporting the NDP. It's not going to come from supporting any of the political parties, you know.
And I guess that's what I mean with like the like they are administrators of, you know, just like the the more like social aspects of that system. Like they don't oversee the system, they just kind of oversee like a few like relations of things to make sure that that's still running smoothly. And it's like, there are some things that we could get through legislature. Dental care, eye care, those sorts of things. I wouldn't mind those things. But at the end of the day, that will only ever be about making sure that the system of extraction runs more smoothly. Like that is all that will ever be, regardless of like, parties or like even individual legislators. Like, there are legislators in this country that I like. I know that they won't ever be able to do anything good. Like anything systematically good.
Right.
Yeah.
I think part of it to me is because this is the tension that always exists in me, and I think it's a good way to framing it before we get into this, which is like you have a lot of the people like Two Cars was saying in the chat about withholding donations to the party or withholding their membership or stuff like this, and I haven't really commented on it on Twitter. I've retweeted and liked some other people's tweets that said that they were doing something similar or reflecting on the fact of how sad it is that this is happening and it's the party's fault that this is happening. And I share all those sentiments. But for me, the conflict for me is that like, I don't support the party because I think the party is going to be good on these issues, And I feel like I've made the same comments when it comes to like the American election, when you had a lot of people who are like, I can't vote for the Democrats because the Democrats suck or something, And it's like, and part of it has to do with like like a feeling that somehow the party must do everything that represents you, or it comes with some sort of stain. Or it's like, the party does what it does. I don't feel a personal stain because I didn't help them get anywhere, But like my hope is in getting involved with the party that I can make it less bad, or get some of the things like you said, a little bit better dental, or a little bit like, and the minimal amount of time that I invest in the party is purely for that reason, and not for some sort of like systematic structural thing, which I don't think is going to come from electoralism. Like, we honestly need to get rid of electoralism. I just, or like our kind of it. And I don't know. I do have ideas of how to work around that. It's just like that might be getting too far afield of what we want to talk about today, and that's something that like we're always going to be chatting about on our show. But like, I don't think that the sole activity that one should be engaged in is the political system and our current electoral system. I don't think that is the sole locus in which people should be motivated and activated within. But I also was like, I sympathize with people who want to withhold their money 100%. In fact, I would recommend, the NDP is probably not going to love me for saying this, but don't donate anything monetarily to the party. The only thing I donate to the party is enough to get my membership, which I think is $5 a year. Because I'm currently unemployed, I can get into the party with a low cost. And that's all I give them. And I give them some time. And the time that I use within the party is to try to push them a little bit more to the left. And that's all that I do. But I realize that like a lot more of my activism, I think, happens outside of the party context. Which party? The NDP. It's a Canadian party, ZZ Fly, in case you're not aware of Canadian politics. Although it doesn't say you're a first-time chatter, so you might be Canadian or know what we're talking about anyways. But the NDP. But anyway, so like, so my sort of, I guess I wanted to frame that because it's like I don't know that withholding our membership from the party is going to make them any better. And the other thought of in my mind is just like, what other party would I vote for anyways? like if the NDP are not going to be better on this issue, the Liberals aren't going to be better on this issue. The Conservatives are definitely not going to be better on this issue. None of them are going to be better on this issue. Even the NDP fucking sucks on this issue. So it's like, I don't know, like we're fucked on this issue in terms of like going to the electoral parties for help on this. We're not going to win. And in part because it gets to like the legal discussion where it's like, the NDP is going to shy away from any discussion having to do with attacking the legal structure of this country, which is, I think, what needs to happen.
Yeah, like,
which is why they'll never put up like, it would be based if our politicians would say things like, we need to start like sabotaging pipelines. They just never would, because the minute they say this, they're no longer politicians. Having to do with funding structure within the NDP, and also they'll get smeared in the media and all that fun stuff. But you have
this is going to be controversial. The Green Party leadership, like the Green Party is currently hiring a leader. I hope David Suzuki goes for it. Okay. Then we have a mainstream party leader, because he was talking about like, yeah, like there is going to come a point where we're going to have to blow up pipelines. Like, he's been trending on Twitter for days because of it. And it's like one of the best things he's said in a very long time. Because like that man, I don't know. I've heard some rough things about the dude.
Yeah,
but also like
he's a roller coaster
ride. Yeah, but it's also just like, it's the same reason why like I wanted Dimitri Lascaris to be leader of the Green Party. It's not because like I think that would somehow make the Green Party a good project or like electoralism like worth it. It would just be so fucking funny to have somebody saying this shit on like debate stages and like national TV. Like, it would just be so good, and that's what like we need a little bit more of that. I like
100%. And the thing is, he's an interesting figure to be able to do it, given his like clout that he already holds as a media figure. You know what I mean? Like, I can't imagine like some random, like if Matthew Green were to start doing that, like as much as like out of the NDP's, he has said something about the Wet'suwet'en, and it's generally been things that I appreciate him saying. But you should block ZZ Fly. I don't want them in my chat. Thank you. We don't need no Kevin Leary supporting assholes in our chat. No, thank you. Get out of here. You're kind.
I was going to respond
disgusting.
to that one saying like low tier troll, but
you can still respond. They're just banned. They're just not
they don't need to exist in our chat. I don't need to see it. I know that those types exist out in the wild, but they don't need to exist in my periphery. All right.
Just as a blanket statement, by the way, for everyone that appeals their bans, we don't look at them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There's appeals? Oh my
God. You can't appeal. I don't know
these.
if we've received any, but
let me try this again. I ignore your appeal bans.
Listen, I'll read them. I will read the appeals. You will not get back.
I haven't even looked for our appeals. That's amazing.
I'm trying to find this area now. I'm on the mod screen.
The point I was making was merely, so Matthew Green has said some nice things about what's like in solidarity with the Wet'suwet'en, and I can appreciate that. But of course, the one thing he has not said is we need to do extra legal, or is it extra legal or anti-legal? I can't remember what the phrase is. Do things which challenge the legal structure of this country. He has not come out and said that. So
the West Germans in like the 60s and 70s had a thing called the extra parliamentary opposition, which was basically like, it was largely based around like the student movement, where it was like people who were opposed to any possibility of like what the like electoral system could bring them. And like they knew that nothing fundamentally would change, even if you got like, oh, you get the Social Democrats in or whoever else. Like, there's still going to be former Nazis in the like judiciary system. There's still going to be like the rehabilitated Third Reich people that are just like ever present in their society. And so they were just like, okay, fuck Parliament. We're doing our own opposition. Like, oh, you're going to like vote against a motion. Okay, we're going to start like, firebombing Nazi like offices. Like,
yep.
I don't know. There are.
And sometimes you have to bomb a Nazi's
other
office.
Options.
I mean, that's like, raising the those kind of examples are like so clear to me, in terms of like, it's amazing. Like, you could probably talk to anyone in our country who's been raised on a steady diet of the History Channel and World War II propaganda. And like, that being said, when I use propaganda here, I'm not saying that World War II is a bad thing. In fact, unlike some of the, remember John Doyle said something like he was against World War II, so eventually he's going to make a video about it. We'll listen to someone who thinks World War II is not a good idea. I happen to think it was a good idea to some extent. So, you know, defeating Nazis is actually based and cool. And even defeating the Empire of Japan was good, except for the dropping of the nukes and that stuff. But all that being said is that, you know, you could give an example to all these people who've been raised on that material, the like Saving Private Ryan, all these things, right? Schindler's List, all these movies that like tell us about how terrible Nazi Germany was and how terrible the Holocaust was, all that fun stuff. And then you ask them a hypothetical of like, if you were in Nazi Germany when they started doing the things that they were doing, would you have just gone along with it or rebelled? And most people, of course, is like, they have the hero complex and they're like, of course, even if it was against the law, I would have like stormed in there and blown up that Nazi building because blah, Nazis bad. When it's like obvious that then when it comes to our own case, when there's real crises going on and they're like, well, I don't know if you should punch Richard Spencer in the face because, you know, if we just let everyone punch each other in the face, it's like, I don't know, maybe we should stop Nazis from getting power, even if that means we have to hurt them a little. It frustrates me that people somehow can agree that if they exist in a past, and part of it is because they know they'll never live the past, right? There's a sense of like distancing there where it's like, you could say that you're going to do something all you want in the past, but of course you would be just as much a coward back then as you would be today, you know? Anyways, that's just a little frustrating thought I've had in agreeing with you, Vienna. Now,
I got distracted by this mod page. I'm trying to figure out how to do predictions. I don't know if we can do that yet, though.
Try, or maybe Google it. I don't know if I want to read through all of this. I might just sum up some of it. Because I'm looking at the time.
I think we can kind of just like talk around it rather than just like.
Because I'm looking at how long it is, and I'm like, eh. I read a good sizable chunk of it. I didn't read the whole thing, but it's not good. I mean, here's forging ahead with a boondoggle. Their government committed at least $5.35 billion in public subsidies through tax breaks and incentives to LNG Canada. Consortium of multinational corporations led by Royal Dutch Shell, the federal government has also kicked in nearly $2 billion in subsidies. I mean, the thing is, they support the government of the NDP, or the BC government, NDP government, even the Alberta NDP government. Both of which had power. The BC still currently have power, but have invested in the oil and gas industry and the infrastructure involved in it. Every single time. Apparently also what this article gets into is they suppressed members who raised issues within their caucus. So it says decisions are made in closed meetings attended by Horgan and key, often unelected advisors, including the Premier Chief of Staff, Jeff Meggs. Over the last decades, the BC NDP has taken on a good deal of the surrounding neoliberal political culture, so that by now, with its decision made in an exceedingly top-down way, it appears incapable of articulating an alternative vision for the province, Carroll said. On issues of energy, climate, and environment, they have not wanted to ruffle the feathers of the dominant class, instead succumbing to lobbying pressure and focusing instrumentally on winning elections rather than helping lead a real paradigm shift. Corporate capital really is in the driver's seat. The plans to kickstart a LNG industry in British Columbia date back to our Liberal governments of Gordon Campbell and Christy Clark, but were only implemented once the NDP, with Meggs as Horgan's top advisor, took power. After leaving office, Clark joined the board of an LNG company and in 2018 praised the NDP for finalizing a deal for Coastal GasLink and the LNG Canada terminal on the coast, an achievement Clark herself had failed to accomplish while in office. They could have changed the climate plan or had a moratorium on fracking. There were 100 different things they could have done to stop it, and they didn't, the former premier said. I'm sure lots of their supporters are not happy about this. You know that episode of South Park where Cartman feeds his bully his parents? That would be my only argument concerning punching Nazis. Like, maybe get more elaborate. Fair, Orbist. Yeah, maybe we could be more clever. Although, like, the punching Richard Spencer was clever in its own way because the reporter asked him about, like, the meme pin he was wearing. He was wearing a Pepe pin. And so he was discussing what a meme was the moment he got punched in the face and was therefore made a meme, which is, like, pretty meta, I must say. He was talking about memes when he became a meme. Beautiful.
Okay, I'm repeating the prediction thing.
What prediction are we making?
Will the article end in a pro-NDP way? And I'm making the submission period 1 minute. Go.
What if we're almost at the end of the article, so...
Well...
We'll find out.
Damn, that's too bad.
Will the article end in a pro-NDP way?
Yeah, that's as much as I can think.
Looks like... Yeah. I'll let it run before we get to the answer. Then I'll do that. Throw your guesses
I think
in.
it's probably going to end not. But who is it from? It's from The Breach? Oh, never mind. Yeah, it's definitely not going to be pro-NDP. Oops. Orb, thank you. Also, is that a Mabim Bam reference? What? Orb is horse. See, I can't vote in the predictions, or else then I can't decide what the outcome is.
Yeah.
So
it's going to end now anyways. So did no win?
Okay.
Oh, well, like, the predictions
no
are
did
in.
in fact
so...
win, but yeah, let's finish the article now.
The 2 years we spent fighting to even discuss the LNG subsidies is why we need to elect people to the NDP executive who are passionate about climate action and grassroots democracy, said Ashley Zarbantani, a party activist who is running for chair of the Standing Committee on Environment and Economy in elections that close this coming Friday.
Is it going to be pro-NDP?
I don't know. I understand that people are quitting, but if they leave the party, they leave their vote at the door. How can they expect to change things without having a say? Zarbantani's opponent is Melissa Marr, an executive assistant to the Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General Mike Farnworth. So, like, yeah, this other person is probably not going to win.
Read the next paragraph.
In a statement to The Breach, Marr said, "It's an exciting time to be a New Democratic in BC," citing a recent award the government won at the UN Climate Summit in Glasgow.
It's an exciting time to be a New Democrat in BC.
Jesus Christ.
Our premier keeps being like, yeah, people die. That's fine.
Marr declined to comment on the LNG industry and the RCMP raid on the Wet'suwet'en territory. The party's future really depends on whether the Green left within the NDP can gain significant ground. I want to find out who Carol is, because Carol was mentioned earlier, but, like, we did not read the part where they were introduced.
Yeah. Can we finish the article first?
Well, I just want to know who they are because it might give context. That possibility could hold out hope of a robust social democratic government that offers alternatives to corporate rule with a vision of decarbonization and a comprehensive strategy for good, green jobs, using the full force of the state and the public sector to lead a just transition. The more people abandon ship because the government isn't doing what we want, the worse off we'll be, said one longtime member. We have to come together. There are way more of us.
Ooh, that sounds positive. That sounds pro-NDP.
I don't know. I feel like it ends neutrally because he's the writer is just quoting.
I'm choosing yes. I think that was pro NDP because that ended very much like, oh yeah, if we all just vote hard enough, then boom, we'll fix it.
Yeah.
And that's Muta, yes, it is rigged because I get to choose the
So that means Orbis Cheval gets the victory on
Orban
Alarm.
Viking.
Yeah.
Viking.
There you have it. I mean, I honestly, I don't think anyone wins. I don't think there was enough. I feel like this was more of a descriptive article. Like I don't. They were quoting
No, come
NDP
on.
people, so I lean more towards neutral. But...
That's how electoralism works. You're right, Ori. Nobody gets what they want.
I don't know. In terms of like straight up electoralism, though, like there's an element in which I want to say like some of what those people said at the end there isn't completely wrong. Just in terms of the fact of like, who else are you going to vote for in BC? I don't like you're fucked essentially. Sorry.
BC Greens.
Are the BC Greens going to be any better than this? I mean, our federal Greens aren't any better than this, so it's like
they will not be. They'll be better on environment stuff. Worse on everything else.
Maybe.
So it depends on how much of a one you think you're going to be.
But even the Greens,
no, because they came out pretty
supportive...
strongly against Fairy Creek.
Okay.
And I don't know about the Wet Sweat and stuff though.
They might be strong on Fairy Creek because of the trees and stuff like this, chopping down of trees.
Yeah.
But like when it comes to the oil stuff, they seem pretty supportive of continuing our oil extraction economy. So
I mean, that's the federal Greens. These ones.
Yeah, that's why I said I don't know. I don't know enough about the BC Greens. I also don't know what like chance they stand electorally, like how popular they are. Or...
They have a few seats in, like they held the balance of power before Horgan called the election early.
Yeah, I might say if you're in NDP and the Greens stand a chance, it might be better to vote Green than NDP. But I mean, it also depends. Like, it's hard to say because the Liberals there are like they're conservative, so.
Yeah, it's all just very weird.
We'll listen to two cars.
BC Green Party shared a thing saying reconciliation at gunpoint, conflict over land and resources continues despite BC NDP promises. And they shared a YouTube video of that. They want permanent paid sick leave. Just like scrolling around. Yeah, no, they've been pretty pro it. Wet'suwet'en on Twitter at least.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yesterday, BC Greens asked why RCMP are quick to enforce an injunction against Wet'suwet'en land defenders while little is done to address Coastal GasLink's environmental transgressions.
Yeah, it might be the case that I don't know enough about BC politics to know that Greens are a good opportunity in BC.
Yeah.
Either way, this sucks. Everything about this sucks. And yeah, solidarity with Wet'suwet'en. I keep mentioning if anything happens, there hasn't been a lot happening in terms of activism locally, and I don't know why that is, but I think a lot of people who usually lead Indigenous actions are caught up in other things, and so it just happens to be what it is right now. But there has been actions like today. I think it was Six Nations held up the 401, so that was fun. And
I didn't hear about that.
Yeah, they did one of they often do like what they call like a rolling. I can't remember, like rolling blockade. So like they basically took up all lanes of the 401 and then drove like at 50 miles per hour or 50 kilometers per hour down the highway, which is normally speed of 100. So like blocked traffic significantly.
Nice.
For your information, the last BC Greens leader, Andrew Weaver, supports the NDP environmental policy. Well, this like gets to the other part, which is like, again, electoralism is not the solution to this problem.
Yeah, amazingly, switching parties will not help anything.
Yeah. So I guess vote for. I mean, it's complicated with the everything about this sucks. Like in our context, like there's some. I don't know what the issues are in BC. I know for a fact I can say here that if we get an NDP government in Ontario, at least we'll get some paid sick leave. I can guarantee you something like that is going to happen, you know, which is again better than Doug Ford, right? So vote NDP, yay!
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing about what Two Cars is saying is like saying that the protesters were unrealistic and that the BC NDP is doing the best they can.
Yeah,
That's
I would
again
never.
the issue of being like the administrators of the people who exist in an extractivist system. Like that's still it, right? Like
That language just pisses me off too. Like I almost.
It's very annoying, but it's also like there isn't an elected government can't go against the foundations of the state that it now has power over. Like,
Yeah. No, it's enough.
And that's why no matter who ever gets in, nothing will ever change. Like, it's just not how these things work.
Nothing systematic. Again, like you get marginal reforms on the edges, which I still say definitely better than voting for conservatives that will make things even worse. Like the degree to which the conservatives will make things worse is like, I wish that the parties closer to the left could make things better, but like I would rather take that marginal better than the extra worse we'll get with conservatives, you know? So in terms of like expending a little bit of amount of energy to vote, do it. And I would recommend voting for NDP, especially for the upcoming Ontario election in June. But, and that's why I will continue to at least help get my candidate elected, even though I know he's not going to come with me to the march to destroy infrastructures.
Yeah.
You know?
No, and
sorry, you're gonna say something?
yeah, like that's always been like one of my issues with Terrence in particular is his like stance around Indigenous issues, where it is kind of a like, oh, Canada is forever and et cetera, et cetera. Like it is just like a naturalization of the current state of things.
But they're thinking in terms. This is the thing that like you have to like, I'm not saying you're thinking this, but people generally need to think about politics generally, is that like they're getting messages and thinking in terms of how do I get reelected? And so like that shapes the things that they say in very frustrating ways. That like I just ignore all that pablum. Like I realize it's being said because they think that we can win over people if we have like, because he's thinking if I come out and say that Canada needs to no longer exist, then people are going to think I'm a bad and not vote for me.
I mean,
even like I'm not even saying that Terrence actually thinks this. I'm just saying that if he were to say it, you know, there will be backlash to that, I think, right? And so they avoid doing anything controversial, and it just becomes watered down, and I hate it.
Yeah.
It
just sucks. That's the thing.
Yep.
Hello, my rebels. Hello, my rebels. I'm a good boy. I'm a weirdo.